Hello and welcome. Have you ever had a really huge producing plant during the summer that you wish you could reproduce that next year? Well, today I'm going to show you how you can reproduce that maybe by overwintering those great strong plants that produced a lot this year and bringing that into the spring next year. You're in the garden with Patrick. So today what I'm going to show you is how you can overwinter plants. We're going to take two plants that have done really well for me this year. I'm going to use a poblano plant and also a jalapeno plant that I'm going to overwinter, and we're going to have those kind of through the season next year in the spring, plant those, and we'll see how those do in the beginning of the year. So I'm going to show you a technique that I use on how you can overwinter your plants. Now, here's the crazy thing. It's December. It's almost Christmas in about 4 or 5 days. And it's about 65 degrees here in El Paso, zone 8A. And I still have a couple of plants here, as you can see, that are just still producing, and they just don't want to die. We've had a couple of light frosts in the low 20s, but again, or freezes really, but not enough to kill off these plants. So these are very, very strong plants. So instead of pulling your plants for the winter, what I did is I thought I'd just let them continue to produce and see what happens. And sure enough, I have two really, really strong plants that you can see here that are very good in the respect of still producing. They still look healthy, and we're going to overwinter those because they seem to be very strong. I'm also going to save those seeds for next year, because if this is doing such a well job now this late into the winter, then you can imagine what kind of a strong producing plant it's going to be next year. You can see here how this bell pepper is starting to wither away. It got a little bit too cold and is not doing very well, but right next to those plants are my two pepper plants that we're going to overwinter. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these two plants, but I'm going to take this one bell pepper plant out first, but I do want to show you the root structure. So I've already loosened up the soil with my shovel, so I'm just going to pull this out. So, but again, I want you to see the root structure here, how strong that root system is and how far it goes out. Now also I want you to pay attention to is about how deep that root structure goes. It doesn't go much more than about 6 inches, okay? But it's definitely out wider. So, hi Luna, you're gonna help me in the garden? So we have our little helper Luna. So, so once we take the roots, and that way you can see the root system, I do want to show you another one, my tomato plant, the same exact thing, okay? So take a look at the root structure on the tomato plant. So from here is about where I planted. If you remember in that video that we did where we're planting the tomatoes, I put this about this much in deep into the ground. And you can see the root structure here of this tomato plant that I took out is very, very strong also. So good root structure. That's a real plus when you're in the garden. You want to make sure that's going to help healthy plants. So let's take a look at overwintering these two plants here, my jalapeno and my poblano peppers, and we'll look at the root structure also. So again, what I've already done is taken my shovel and I've loosened up the ground here. And so I'm just going to pull this jalapeno plant out, and you can see here the root structure on that is pretty decent. It could probably be a lot better, but again, you got some nice roots here. Okay, so we're going to take this. I'll show you what we're going to do once we overwinter this and put this in the pot. So we're going to go ahead and do our poblano the same way. Now look at this thing, how huge it is. Okay, this is probably at least about 4 foot tall, and Luna's going to help me pull this out. She's probably going to get scared, huh? All right, so we're going to pull this out, take a look at the root structure on this thing. I'm sure this one, same thing, I loosened it up a little bit with my shovel before, so it doesn't take so long. But again, look at how the root structure is on this. Okay, it's very wide out and it's not really deep. So when you're planting your raised beds, you really don't need much more than about 8 to 12 inches of depth, because your plants are going to grow wide. You want them to go deep, but again, depending on your watering and the soil and all that, this is the way ours is going to work. Okay, so once I've taken this plant out, I'm going to show you the next step of what we're going to do. So take a look at this poblano plant. It's huge. I mean, this is amazing and has been a great producer for me. So we're going to overwinter this, and we've saved some of the seeds. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and show you how you're going to overwinter that. First, once you pull out your plant, you're going to rinse the root system as best as you can from all of the dirt and soil that you have. That way you don't have any of these microbes or any little pests that come in. Okay, so that's basically what you're going to do with your root system. Clean that up pretty well. We'll do both here. And that's it. Okay, so now we have a clean root system. What we're going to do next is put that in a pot. Once I do that, or before I do that, I'm going to show you how we're going to clip this, because you don't want to put this huge plant in your greenhouse or bring it inside in your house or in your garden. I'm sorry, in your garage. We're going to kind of trim this back a little bit so that it doesn't produce during the winter time. One of the signs of a healthy garden: worms. Found this on the root system. All right, so here's what we're going to do with this plant. Okay, it's going to seem kind of harsh, but we want pretty much nothing of remaining of this plant except maybe these 3 branches here. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and if you see here, you can cut right where these nodes are at. This is where your leaves are going to start coming out, and you can see here on this one right here, right? So that's where your branches come out, and then there's going to be some leaves there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut that one off. So we don't want that. But you can see here, we got a node here, we got a node here, we got some here. So you could cut it here, you can cut it here. I'm going to go ahead and just cut mine right above this one at about a 45-degree angle. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing. And again, see here where it's coming out, right where that node is. So again, we're going to cut right above this one here. It's pretty thick. Seems very harsh to do this, but this is definitely something that will ensure that this plant will survive during the winter. And then once you are able to take that plant in the spring when it's warm enough, you're going to go ahead and put that into the ground. So this is what's going to remain. We're going to take this, put this in a pot, show you that next. Let's go ahead and do our jalapeno. So again, all of these little things, you're going to just go ahead and take these off. These little, I guess you can call them suckers if you want. But again, look, we still in December. We have flowers coming out. This sucker just wants to produce. So these are the strong plants that you want to keep your seeds from. So what I'm going to do on this plant is I'm going to leave this one here, and you see how it's kind of bifurcating here. I'm going to cut each one here, and then I'm going to do the same here. So this one unfortunately has got a long stem, but we're going to still keep that. So same concept. I'm going to go ahead and cut it right at the nodes there, and this one here, and this one. Cut this one just above that. Okay, so that is our jalapeno plant now. So that looks pretty harsh, but we're gonna, the goal of this is not to have them grow and produce leaves and fruits and put all that energy. The goal is to maintain the growth, what they have. So you're going to keep it moist and watered, but you don't really want them to grow throughout the winter. You'll bring them out in the spring when it starts to get warmer, and then they'll start to get those leaves again. I'm going to leave that one on there just so you can kind of watch the growth there. Okay. I was also able to save a sashito pepper. Sashito peppers are a very, very mild pepper, and they're really delicious. But that's what a sashito looks like. Look it up. It's really worthwhile to plant that one. It's very prolific also. Did very well in the garden this year. So we're going to keep a sashito, a poblano, and a jalapeno. And we'll see how those do in the spring compared to the ones that we're going to start from seed and plant early spring. And we're going to see which one produces better this year. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of our prepared soil that we've already done. Okay, I've already prepared it in the sense that we have boiled water and protecting the dirt from any microbes or anything like that. So you always want to do that. I'll put a link below in the description box on seed starting. So when you're doing seed starting, you want to do that. But if you're going to bring any of your plants indoors, you might want to consider doing that also with the soil that you're going to be using. So we've done that already. And I'm going to take my sashito pepper here, and we're going to put that right in here. And all we're going to do is fill that up with the dirt, the soil that we have. And then we'll water that really well. And again, all you're just doing is you're basically just trying to keep this alive for the winter. And you're going to only put a small amount of moisture in there just to kind of keep it alive. That is essentially what you're doing, and this is how it's going to look. So we're going to go ahead and do our large poblano in this bigger pot here. If you want, again, you can. It's not going to harm it as much to fit this in here a little bit. You can trim these root systems a little bit. It also might help stimulate a little bit more growth too. So we're just going to put that in here, and same thing, we're just going to fill that up with some good soil. And again, it kind of looks very harsh for what we're trying to accomplish here. And mostly, though, again, as I mentioned, is the goal is to preserve this plant and keep it producing. I have done this in the past. I have not been consistent with keeping them alive, but I have overwintered my pepper plants and have done this, and they've done well, at least for 1 year. Again, I don't do as well repeated years, so I have definitely done this though, and then the following year it's a producer. What you're going to do at the springtime, you can either leave it in here if you want, or you can just take this out just like you would any other transplant, put that back in your garden. So that's this one. And now we have our jalapeno plant. I'm going to use that right in here. So same thing. Always try to make your soil ahead of time. I have a video that we're doing that shows you how to recondition your soil. Very, very simple. And really, that's something that you want to do because soil is so expensive. And why would you want to throw away your soil anyway when you can just put a little bit of extra nutrition in there and it'll be just as good as new. So once the plants take the the nutrition out while as they're growing, you just add more organic fertilizer in there. So here's our 3 plants. We have a Sashito, Poblano, and a jalapeno plant that we're gonna overwinter, and we're gonna use these and take that into the spring. Now, once we've had our plants in, we're going to go ahead and just water these a little bit. And like I said, you don't want to keep it too wet, just moist. And then once you do that, you can do one of 2 things. You can just put that in your greenhouse, move that into your garage, check on it every few days. You don't really need a lot of light, because again, we're not looking for growth here. What we're looking for is just to maintain this green that we have and allow the plant to still live. If you're in an area where maybe there's not a lot of moisture, you might consider putting like a little plastic bag over this. That'll help maintain some of the moisture in your soil and in the plant itself. So that's another option if you're interested. You can experiment with the different ways of trying to keep these alive during the winter time. So there you have it. Overwintering your best producing plants. That's all you have to do. It's really simple. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hit that like button that tells YouTube that we're producing content that is of value to you and the viewers. Until next time, happy gardening.